Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Couple of Nukes. As always, I'm your host, Mr. Whiskey, and this episode has been a long time coming. Months ago, I had drove about 4.5, 5 hours to Orlando for it was only about 2 hours podcasting event, courtesy of Buzzsprout Podcast Movement to connect Orlando podcasters, and I then drove 5 hours home. So it was a long day, but well worth it. One of those connections I have here today, Mr. Martin Pigg. It's funny, he and I met in the parking garage. I saw him and I was asking him about, where we were parking or something. And I went to say, I'm here for a podcasting event because I wanted to try and like sneakily see if he was here for the same event, but I ended up not doing it. And then inside the event, I saw him. I said, I knew he was a podcaster. I could sense it. I had that connection, I knew he was a podcast, so I regret not doing that. But we connected, and before I could invite him onto the show, he ended up sustaining a pretty bad injury, which he went through that whole recovery, and it's all on his social media, which we'll have below. But yeah, Mr. Martin Pigg here recovered from that, stronger than before, here to talk about resilience, about physical fitness, about mental health. We're gonna have a great conversation today.
I'm excited. Let's go.
Yeah, so I'll start by explaining for anyone watching the flying pigs behind me wallpaper. For those of you listening, I've got an army of flying pigs behind me. I've got my pink salmon colored, whatever you want to call it, tank top on with the shoulders out because, like I said, we're going to be talking about physical fitness. And obviously, Mr. Pig, that's a huge part of your story. You describe it as you occasionally wear a Speedo on stage. So tell us about your bodybuilding, your muscles, and what role that plays in your life currently and as it has over the years.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for having me here with you. It's great to be here on the podcast. And I want to say something interesting because, first of all, you're going to call me Martin, right? Because you call me Mr. Pig, and I laugh about that because, you know, if I'm on a phone talking to like customer service people or whatever, I'm always waiting because they're never going to say Mr. Pig. They'll always go Mr. Martin because nobody can bring themselves to call somebody Mr. Pig. So I want to start by congratulating you. You came out with that, but call me Martin. That's what I like to be called. No, the bodybuilding thing started. So I lifted weights seriously when I was in high school, and then at 18 I went to college and quit lifting. I quit lifting weights altogether about 20 years old. And then when I was 48, my mom was living with me at the time, and she gave me a gym membership for my birthday to get me started lifting weights again. And like I said, it'd been 28 years, and I was in my mid 40s, I guess, when I started lifting again.
Right.
And so she passed in 2016, about 3 or 4 years after I started lifting again. And so losing her the way I lost her was a very difficult experience. And so what I decided to do, because she had given me this bodybuilding, this gym membership, was I was going to enter a bodybuilding competition to honor her.
Mm.
And so I did that. My first show in 2018. I was in my 50s. I don't know what it was. And then I've done them ever since. So I will be doing one the end of this year.
Nice.
And I just fell in love with it, and it just is a good way to honor mom. And every time I go in the gym now, I have a sign that I look up and give it to mom and thank her for bringing me into the gym. So the gym has been, for a lot of your listeners, they probably can relate. It's like therapy for me. I've
Yeah.
been through a lot of hard times and always am in the gym to do things. But you referenced an injury last year, and last summer I fell and tore my quadriceps tendon and had surgery and was in a walker and a leg brace for like 4 months. And the interesting thing about that was about a week after the injury and the surgery, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna enter another competition. I'm not gonna let this stop me. So I've been going hard at it for the last few months, and then in the December of this year, I'll be back on stage. So that's kind of my story.
Yeah, it's funny going back to the hesitation around your name. All day I was thinking to myself, I was like, do I really call him that? It sounds like it's just so commonly associated with an insult, but I said the man's name is the man's name, and he's used to it. I'm not gonna. But there was some level of embarrassment to it, like, I was like, maybe it's pronounced differently, and if it's pronounced differently, I'm gonna look like a jerk.
But it's funny because it has no impact on me whatsoever because when you grow up with that name and you go into a new school, it's brutal, man.
I
I,
imagine, yeah.
it's like you say, anybody with a funny sounding name, you can't, there's nothing you can say to me that I haven't heard 100 times. So I'm so comfortable with it. It's fun.
Yeah, I might have to make I am a wannabe country singer, so as Johnny Cash had a boy named Sue, I might have a man named Pig. Might have to do it. So yeah, and you mentioned college, and I know you went to prison after college. Could you tell us about that?
Well, the way you said it sounded a little bit leading. Let's don't say I went to
Yeah.
prison. Let's say that I spent 4 years as a prison guard in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. So
Yes, sir.
yeah, I was not a pig in a penitentiary. I was not a pig pen, but I was
I see
I was
what you did there.
a guard. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was reading through your website earlier today, and it says I went to prison, and I said, huh? And it says as an employee. I said, oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you talk about going there and like what drew you into that line of work and has that played any, role in shaping your life with what you do nowadays?
Well, when I got out of college in the town that I lived in, the two best paying jobs were as a teacher and as a prison guard. And prison guards got paid more than teachers, which is sad to say, but I just chose the path that got me more money. You're out of college, you're trying to make money.
Right, yeah.
I'm going to do this because it pays me more money. That's what it was.
And could you say again, what did you get a degree in?
My degree is in physical education.
Okay, so you could have gone that teaching route, but
Yeah,
like you said,
I wanted to make money.
but to bring it full circle, I mean, you're technically a teacher untraditionally, unconventionally nowadays. Can you tell us about, you know, we've been talking about what you do nowadays without actually sharing it. Can you tell us what you do?
Okay, so I'm an author, speaker, and coach in the personal development arena. I've written 2 books, and I'm currently working out. I'm going on stages and speaking about my message. And my overall message to people is that it's not too late to believe in yourself and go for your dreams, regardless of your age, past pain, or current circumstances. And I've kind of lived all of that, so I feel like I'm kind of an expert when it comes to that because I'm living my dream life now. I discovered 15 years ago when I quit my job that I wanted to be an author, speaker, and coach. And it took me a while to get to that. And I went through a lot of hard times to get to that place. So I figure when I tell people, you can go for your dreams regardless of your age, past pain, or current circumstances. I've been through all of that stuff and kept going. So I just go out to the audiences and just give them a message of hope and motivation and to let them know that, they don't have to settle for the life they're expected to live. They can create and live the life they want to live regardless of where they are in their life.
Yeah, and you talked about quitting, realizing this after you quit a job 15 years ago. Is that job the prison guard, or is this a different job later
No,
down
I
the
was
line?
I was a sales manager for 10 years at a company that was really interesting because I was at the time I was making 6 figures. I was doing really well. And one of the things I don't think we've talked about yet is I'm a pilot, right? So imagine this situation. So I discovered that this helping people, this motivating people was my passion and the thing that I really wanted to do with my life. So I'm making 6 figures, probably working 15 to 20 hours a week because I was really good at what I did.
Wow.
Flying airplanes, I'm just flying everywhere. I was living in Baltimore at the time, flying Baltimore to Florida, hanging out with friends, making money, working hardly working at all. And I just said, I'm going to follow my dream. My dream is to be an author, speaker, and coach. And when I quit, my friends thought I was crazy. They're like
Yeah, yeah, of course.
making this much money, you're not barely working, and you're flying airplanes all over the place. Why would you quit? It's just when you feel that call, when you have a passion for something, when you feel like it's your purpose in life, you either listen to that call and you pursue it, or you ignore it and you live a life that's less than what you could have lived if you had pursued your purpose.
It's funny, the episode, well, a few episodes ago at this point, it's Dr. Alon Salas. We talked about he was living on a sailboat, owned a bunch of sailboats, and he would rent them out to clients for money, and he was living his dream life on the waterways of France. And he said one day he just had a calling that, he said, I'm a doctor. And he sold everything, and he went to China to learn medicine. And, everyone thought he was crazy. And, it was one of those, it's like, unless you chase after it, it's not going to chase after you. You're going to have that calling. Maybe you'll hear it more than once if you don't chase after it right away. But, you have to be willing to sacrifice to get it. And I remember growing up with my family, now it was an awful childhood, but there were times where we would all get together and watch television. And one of the shows we would watch was America's Got Talent. And there was a lot of stories of magicians or singers or, any of those creative talents. And they talked about how they were going to, some big university or had this high paying job and they quit it to pursue magic. And I remember my parents were always those doubters that were like, they should have never done that. This guy quit playing piano at Carnegie Hall to do magic because his wrist could only handle so much magic and piano he had to choose. I remember my parents were always like, for that traditional, conventional path. And I always argued with them. I always supported the creative, talented people. And here I am as a podcaster. So, obviously that has always been the case. And so I just have always been in that mindset. And, I think it's like I could never understand my parents' mindset, but I've always put happiness before money. Even like when I was, talking to women and trying to date, they always asked about like, would I rather choose a higher paying job or something I'm passionate about? And the answer was always something I'm passionate about, which wasn't always the right answer to them. Uh, so it's interesting. And so what kind of, I mean, you talk about not wanting to live with that feeling of unsatisfaction in your whole life, but really, did you need some kind of bravery or support to make that decision? Or you just one day said, I quit and I'm going to do it?
Well, I quit cold turkey. I just like called the boss up and said, I'm done. This is it. I found what I'm meant to do with my life, and I'm going to do that. So it was just, I mean, I'm not going to tell everybody that they should do that. You need to
Right.
do what is, comfortable for you. But I was single at the time. I had a little bit of money in the bank. I was doing pretty well. So I had a little bit of a cushion and I just said, let's go for it. Um, but it was a challenge for a long time. I do want to go back to say one thing that you kind of caused me to think about something. Um, I talk about in speeches that I give, and I talk with my coaching clients because I do coaching one-on-one with people about the fact that there's an author, his name is Squire Rushnell. Squire Rushnell wrote a book called When God Winks. And so it's this idea that God winks are he calls them God winks are a seemingly random event that is actually a signpost that can help you successfully navigate your life. It's this
Mm.
inspired thought. We all get these inspired thoughts. Um, for me, when I when I decided to become a pilot, I was before that decision. I made that decision. I was uh, I was in the Caribbean and I did parasailing. I don't know if you've done parasailing before, but I did parasailing. And when I got home, the voice in my head said you should try flying airplanes because I thought parasailing was really cool, right? So
Oh, okay.
when I
Yeah.
when I and then the very first time I was in an airplane with a friend of mine who was a pilot, and he gave me the controls of the aircraft. As soon as I put my hands on the controls, I was hooked with flying. And so that was a passion. I have something called the PIGG Principle, and we got so much we can talk about. But basically, the PIGG Principle is when you pursue your passion with intention, your passion will either become your purpose or lead you to your purpose.
Mm,
So what happens is you have a passion, which mine was flying. You pursue that passion with intention, right? It's not just occasionally you do it. You are focused on that passion. You love that passion and you pursue that passion. When you do that, that particular passion is going to either become your purpose or it's going to lead you to your purpose. What I mean by that is my passion for flying led me to my purpose as an author, speaker, and coach. So I always talk about, you use the word passion. I always talk about how important it is to have passion for what you do,
yeah.
you know? And so that's just what I believe and how I've lived my life.
I totally agree. It's interesting. If God hadn't put as much physical distance between my then fiance and I at that time, where I had to drive 8 hours there and back to see her, I would have never listened to podcasts. It just wasn't something I did. But with that 8 hour drive, I could only listen to music for so long. I said, I need to do something else. And I said, what is audio only that I can listen to while driving? Because I didn't think that, oh, I could just most YouTube videos aren't designed to be audio only. They're designed to be partnered up with a visual. So I said, oh, there's this thing called podcast. I'll check it out. And little did I know that was going to lead to me becoming a podcaster, going on podcaster cruises and, speaking at podcast conferences. Like, would have never known. And, I think it's very interesting that my passion for podcasting is driving so many other facets that I've gone into now, which is the comedy, the speaking, the writing. It's all to help people. And podcasting serves as the main medium through that, and then to which I connect with other people. But so how did I want to understand you talked about your passion for flying led you to the authorship, to the speaking, to the mentoring. What is that connection there that we're not picking up on right now?
Well, the passion for flying was very inspirational for me. And I about so probably about 2004 I got my pilot's license. And about 2008 I started really getting into personal development. Like a lot of people, I watched The Secret, and then from there it went into other things. So I had my pilot's license. I got into personal development, fell in love with that. And then it really was understanding that I didn't want to make flying a career, right?
Okay.
Because I knew so many pilots who became professional pilots and they lost the passion for flying because it
Yeah.
just became they're just showing up
Yeah. Yeah.
this city, and I go back and whatever. So I knew I didn't want to ruin that passion. So I was actually doing passion and personal development at the same time, and I knew what it felt like to be passionate about flying. So what I did was basically I transferred that passion for flying into my passion for personal development. So it kind of went that way.
Hmm. So you knew that you were so passionate about flying that if you didn't feel that same level of enthusiasm as longing, as desire, that excitement for something else, then it wasn't for you.
Right. And the thing about it is what I loved, what about here's the thing when I talk about a passion. When I talk about a passion, I'm not talking about just a garden variety passion. I'm talking about finding a passion that resonates with who you are at your core, that speaks to you in here. It's not just any kind of thing that you have fun. It's something deeper. Because when you find a passion that resonates with who you are at your core, it can change your life and the world. And so with flying, obviously flying resonated with who I was at my core because it spoke to me at a deeper level because flying for me was freedom. That was what that was for me. Being an entrepreneur, being a coach, an author was entrepreneurial. So
Mm,
it's everything that I felt about flying, I just transferred into this inspiration and passion and freedom and everything that I felt about what I do now.
Yeah. And so let's get into you talk about transferring that, passion into personal development. And so how did you go about just becoming a coach one day? Did you just how does that happen?
Well, it's kind of a crazy story. Now, this is the thing that I would tell your listeners about if so if you have a dream for your life or if you feel like you have a purpose, the two things you can control are what you want to do and why you want to do it. You cannot control how it will happen or when it will happen. Those
Yeah.
two things are completely out of our control, right? So, so remind me of the question. I got so lost in the how and the when and
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Was it?
Talked about, you talked about just taking that passion for flying, analyzing it and how you feel, and then doing personal development. So the
Yeah,
bridge
coach.
between those two, how you
Yeah.
became a personal developer.
And then you asked me about the coaching, right? So
Right.
this is why. So I knew I wanted to coach, writing, speaking, coaching. That's my gig, right? So I knew I
Right.
wanted to coach. I knew what I want. I knew I wanted to coach. I knew why I wanted to coach to help people one on one to make a difference in their life. And when I say you can't control the how or the how it'll happen or the when it'll happen, how it happened for me is I got my first coaching gig that lasted 18 months with the CEO of a big company in Washington, D.C., and six of his senior VPs that worked for him. And how it started was that this guy was following me on Facebook because I was inspirational and whatever, and he liked my stuff. So I sent him a message on Facebook Messenger one time. I said, "Hey, listen, let's get together on a call." So my idea was to call this guy. We'd have a nice conversation, and we would form a mastermind group together because we were kind of similar minds and whatever. I thought maybe have a call a week and whatever. And so we got on our call, and I said to him, I said, you know, I'm thinking I'd like to do a mastermind group with you. You and I can just have weekly calls. And he said, Martin, I want you to coach me. I'm,
Okay. Yeah.
okay. So, and the thing was, I was like, huh. And I said to him, I said, he said to me, how much would you charge me a month to coach me? And that caught me complete because I was just going to do a mastermind group. I had no idea we were going to go into a coaching relationship. So I gave him a number, right, of what I would charge him per month. And he said, that's too low. He said, I'll never hire you if that's all the money you ask for as a coach, because that tells me you're not good at what you do. Are you good at what you do? And I said, I'm really good at what I do. He said, okay, give me a number. And I turned it around on him. I said, okay, you tell me, what would you be willing to pay for a top-notch coach? And he gave me a figure. I said, okay, that's what I want. He said, okay, I'll pay you. Now, all of that came out of a call that was really only supposed to be a mastermind call, and it grew into a highly lucrative 18 months relationship. And I made a big impact in the lives of seven people, right? So that's what I talk about when I say if you have a dream for your life, focus on what that dream is and why you want it. Be doing action, taking action, right? But don't get so focused on how it's going to happen and when it's going to happen because that's not up to you. But if you're
Mm.
doing it, you're loving it, you're passionate about it, and you're taking steps, a door or a window is going to open for you. You're going to be aligned with that thing and you're going to draw it to you. And you're going to wake up one day and you're going to be living that dream life.
It resonates with me with one of the previous guests on my show. I can't remember who said it. I want to say it was Dame Lady Jen Duplessis, but don't quote me exactly on that. I believe she said that luck is just when opportunity and preparation meet. And you talk about that preparation being stay aligned with yourself, prepare everything you want. Let's say if it's coaching, if it's courses you have to take, if it's, a certain way of talking, if it's books you have to read, and then because that's what you can control, the preparation, the opportunity, like you said. I mean, I've had plenty of things in my speaking and writing and podcasting that it's just like right time, right place, or what are the chances that this person is knows this person that wants to book me or whatever it may be. So it's definitely, a very interesting way that it develops. And I want to get into, or go ahead, you have something to say?
I was going to say, with regard to luck, right? One of the things I love about luck or when people talk about luck, I heard this and I love this. And the guy said, if you want to be lucky, the secret is to hang around long enough until you get lucky. Okay, that makes sense. Persevere, keep going, because a door is going to open for you if you just hang in there.
Yeah. I mean, even just scientifically speaking, for all my logical thinkers out there, if luck can happen at any given time, the longer time that passes, the more likely there's a chance that it'll happen. So,
Right,
but I
absolutely.
completely agree. And I think that's why we see, so many podcasters fail. I work with Alex Sanfilippo through he's creator of Podmatch and Pod Lottery and all that, and he puts out a report every month of the latest in the podcasting industry for independent podcasters. And it's about 400 or so, sometimes less, sometimes more, depending on the month, podcasters that quit every day. Less than 5% who make it to 100 episodes. 50% don't even make it to like 8 episodes, I believe. So when you talk about staying long enough, so many of us get frustrated. And I'm using podcasting because it's a very clear example that I can relate to that people don't see instant success. But it could be the same with coaching. I mean, you've got that one person, but that could be the only person you have for the next 3 years for all we know. You got to keep going. Or another great example, real estate. So many people think that they're going to just start selling houses left and right. You may only sell one or two houses that year and hope that those paychecks are big enough to last you in the meantime. But the longer you stay at it and stay consistent, I mean, they talk about when it comes to content creation, whether podcasting, writing, social media influencing, consistency is so important because you just keep showing up every day, and in one of those days, we talk about you never know who's going to listen to your podcast or even with book signings. Some authors are discouraged. They host this event and only 3 people show up for the book signing. But that one person could be a famous author or the head of a marketing company who likes what you do. You just never know. And I love there's an old comic graphic that I see so much on the internet. It's a guy who's been mining underground and he turns around and he was just inches away from a giant diamond. I've seen that example so much, and that's really how it is.
Well, have you ever heard of the book Think and Grow Rich with Napoleon Hill?
I've heard of it. I've had a couple guests recommend it. I have
Uh,
not read it yet, though.
but it's kind of the same thing you're talking about. There's this story about being 3 feet from gold, and these guys giving up, because they were hitting these dry spots and they weren't finding any gold. They sold their equipment to some guys who went back out there. They went 3 feet the other way and they found just tons amount of gold. So yeah.
Yeah, and it'd be like imagine you had given up right before that client, and then someone else who was less professional than you, less experienced than you, stumbled upon that person and then, got that client. So it's definitely the way life goes sometimes. And, it can be really rough for podcasters, for authors, for social media influencers, and all the above, or even like sales, going door to door and, you're getting nothing, nothing, nothing. I mean, anything entrepreneurial, any gig. And so I want to talk about, we've mentioned authors and writing, and you've mentioned being an author as well. So where did that develop from doing the personal development? At what point in your journey did the authoring come along?
When I was in college, my mom was a published author, so I had that start, and I loved writing. I'm a very creative person. But when I was in college, I remember writing a term paper in college, and the professor failed me. He gave me an F on the paper,
Wow.
and I I went up to her after the class, and I said, because I had poured my heart and soul into this, spent hours and hours and hours. I said, "Why did you fail me for this term paper?" And she said, "Because it was too good." He said, the level you're at, you couldn't have written this without copying it from other people." Now, we didn't have the internet, so it's not like I could go copy and paste a lot of stuff. So that really rocked me to the point where I didn't write for 20 years. And then I just rediscovered the passion for writing. And what I talk about a lot of times in my speeches, and this is really important for people, when you have a dream for your life, like I had a dream as an author, speaker, and coach, and as an author, when you're going through hard times, when it looks like things aren't working the way you want them to. Writing was something that helped me heal and kept me moving forward. So it was something that I used as therapy as well as something that I just genuinely love to do. So when I wrote the first two books I've written, Winning the War with Yourself and The PIGG Principle, both of those books came at times where I went through some hard times. The first book, I published the first book a year after my mom died, which was a very traumatic experience in my life. And the second book I wrote, I published 7 months after I found out that my wife had had an affair. And so the reason I say that to you is that when you have a passion, like I had a passion or rediscovered passion for writing, for when you're pursuing a passion, it's not only something that can get you through, that's great during good times, but it's also something that can get you through hard times because um, writing both of those books, when they came out in both situations, I wasn't mentally or emotionally prepared to market or sell either one of those books. But writing those books helped me heal and kept me moving forward in the pursuit of my dreams.
Yeah, we've talked a lot on the show about the therapeutic power of writing and what it can get us through, as well as working out. But I want to pivot back real quick to that college incident that you had. It's something that people are so quick. They want to make any excuse or reason to explain why they couldn't do what you've done yourself. I remember when Tim Thomas came on the show. He was Australia. He's the oldest guy to ever join the Australian Special Forces, and everyone kept telling him, "You're too old to do MMA fighting. You're too old to join the Special Forces." And he said, "You're too old to do it at your age." He said, "At my age, I can do it." And I remember watching a video. I like to consume a lot of David Goggins content, and he gets all these comments. You're on TRT, you're on steroids, this and that. The same thing with you had to had AI write that, or in your case, just that you copied and pasted it. But in general, people are so quick to try to make some kind of shortcut for you because a shortcut is the only way they could do it. You know, there are a lot of people out there using steroids, so I won't deny that, but it's really insulting and upsetting when someone who has trained so hard to be fit, to be muscular naturally gets accused of that. The same way with you poured your heart and soul into this, and they say, well, this is too good, you had to cheat. Or sometimes I've seen even relationships, you do some big grand romantic gesture, and they're like, what's the catch? What are you hiding? Things can never
Well,
be as they are.
yeah, and you hit on something that's really kind of a sticking point for me, and that's the subject of age. And I see so many people that limit what's possible for them because they think they're too old, right? And so a lot of times, and even in this latest speech that I'm going out and talking to audiences with, I don't think people understand because, like, if you were to ask me today, how old are you, right? I would not answer that question in the traditional manner because I don't say I am blank because I am are two of the most powerful words in the English language because they become a declaratory sentence when you go, I am poor, I am mad, I am rich, I am whatever. I don't like that. So if you ask me that, I would probably come back, well, my driver's license says I am blah. The government would tell you I am this. I don't buy into that. And
Mm.
I tell people in my speech, I say, you know what? People stop what's possible for them because they think they're too old. And you just mentioned this Tim Thomas fellow, right? And so with people, I say, look, this is a real important point. Seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, and years were all made up. There are 24 hours in a day and 365 days in a year because people a long time ago got together and invented all of it. My driver's license, if you look at it, says I was born on February 4th. February is not real. And the number four and every other number is not real. So
Yeah.
they're all made up. So I'm never going to go out and say, well, I can't do this because I am this age or that age or whatever. I mean, I'm I'm actually kicking butt in the gym and going way past this injury I had. If I was to walk around and go, I'm just yeah, I can't, I would never get it. I would never do it. So I'm on a mission, and you hit a sore spot there, because I'm on a mission to get people to realize that age is not real unless you believe it.
In my episode of, having a life of vitality at any age, because there's so many podcasters out there pushing for, not to be defined by your age. And it's remarkable. I had EJ Skull Crusher Snyder, America's #1 ranked survivalist, on the show, 6 times naked and afraid champion. And he's in his 60s, maybe early 70s, and he's out here throwing axes, killing alligators, climbing mountains. And then you have people, I've seen people who are in their 50s, and they're like, I'm old now, you got to take care of me, son. It really is. Whether you want to use that excuse or not. And I go back to that episode on, living a life with vitality. Adrienne Simmons, she talked about how when her health started to decline because of her poor choices, she used her age as an excuse. Well, doc, I'm reaching this age, so now this and this are supposed to happen. He goes, well, who said those are supposed to happen? He said that doesn't have to happen just because you've reached this age. That's just what people want to say so they can excuse it, or sell more medicine, or whatever it may be. And I actually have the opposite situation where, some people are impressed by what I've done at my age, and where I have a lot of people are like, well, you're too young to have done all that or to know this or that. And I always refer to, just because I'm a man of God, I refer back to 1 Timothy 4:11 through 13, which is command and teach these things. Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for the believers in speech and conduct and love and faith and in purity. XYZ, XYZ. And then there's even some other sections of the Bible where extremely young people are used. And at the same time, you see really old people are used where they say, I'm too old to do this and that. Yet, in the biblical sense, God says age doesn't matter. Who I want to use and who I call, I call. In the same way, if there's a passion calling on you, whether it's to speak, whether it's to write, whether it's to be athletic, you shouldn't let that stop you. And I think it's so, like I said, people want shortcuts, people want excuses to either not do something or to explain why people have done what they're struggling to do. And it's truly sad to see people give up on life after 40 or 50 or 60 or after menopause and just say, well, I'm done. These are my retirement years. When there's so much more life to live, you're only halfway through for most of the part. I mean, like you said, you're out here lifting weights, probably more athletically capable than probably 85% of Americans who are 20, 30, 40 years younger than you.
Well, it's interesting because one of the reasons I do the bodybuilding now is and I've done it for all these years now, is that I asked a pro bodybuilder, a friend of mine, one time about just how popular bodybuilding was, or competitive bodybuilding. And he said, one half of 1%, 1/2 of 1% of everybody who ever walks into a gym competes.
Wow.
I like to be that part of that 1/2 of 1%, And I like to
Just
be
by
doing
showing
it.
up.
I like to be doing it at this point in my life when so many other people are giving up. And I'm like, no, 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 you don't have to give up. It's all about what's up here.
That is an amazing statistic. Yeah, and most of it is not that people aren't capable of doing it. It's just that they choose not to because they put limitations on themselves. And just speaking of limitations and excuses and shortcuts, I want to get into what you call the PIGG principle. It is an acronym, and I'd love for you to explain that to us and how we can apply it to our lives to live a life where we are accomplishing and pursuing our dreams and not limiting ourselves, not, holding our life or our passions back.
Well, the book that I wrote, the most recent book that came out a couple of years ago called The PIGG Principle, talks about this principle that I spoke to a little bit earlier in the program. And the principle is, when you pursue your passion with intention and gratitude, your passion will either become your purpose or lead you to it. And when you live with grace, you help other people find and live their purpose. Now, so the acronym PIGG stands for passion, intention, gratitude, and grace. Now, if we talk about each one of those individual energies, as they relate specifically to finding and living your purpose in life. Passion is finding the one thing that inspires you above all other things. What's that passion? I call it your greatest passion. Intention. Now, intention is the energy of what you do and who you connect to. Who you connect to is super important
Yeah. Yeah.
because I tell people all the time, you can't soar with eagles if you hang around with turkeys. It's just not going to happen. Jim Rohn was right when he said, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So we've got to choose those people wisely. So it's the energy of what you do, and more importantly, who you connect to. The first G in the acronym gratitude is gratitude for the journey and your blessings along the way, because it's easy to be grateful for your blessings and the good parts of your journey, but it's hard to be grateful for the hard parts of your journey. And so I help in my coaching and speaking. I walk people through how to be grateful for the hard stuff. And I use some examples from my own life. And then the last G in the acronym PIGG is grace. And I define grace as moving through the world with love for yourself and others, and generosity in the offering of your time, talents, and network to help other people find and live their purpose or their dream. So it's passion, intention, gratitude, and grace. And it's all about how you use those 4 energies to find and live your dream or to find and live your purpose, because I think the two are the same.
Yeah, and you're still doing that to this day. You came back from your injury where most people, I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, said at your age with that injury, you should just give up on the physical fitness stuff and not risk anything. Is that correct?
Nobody, nobody in my circle would ever say that to me
Yeah, obviously.
because I'm intentional about my circle. I'm not around it. And if somebody starts to say anything that's maybe just outside, I'll cut them off or I'll walk away. I don't listen to that kind of thing. I'm very intentional about those 5 people I spend the most time with. Those are the people that lift me up, that support me, that encourage me, that believe in me, and I do them as well. So I don't have people in my life who who have those kinds of attitudes, and I don't attract those kinds of people because I don't have that same attitude. Because energy, like energies are attracted to each other. So those kinds of people don't come into my life because I don't give out that kind of energy.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you talk about for people who feel like it's inevitable that someone's gonna say something along the way, how would you talk to them about dealing with that?
Well, it really depends on who they are and what their relationship is to you. I mean, if they're friends or their family, I like to talk about it kind of if you can look at a dartboard and you can draw like circles in a dartboard. I look at the top. I look at the people who your allies, your friends, your allies, your close people, people that vibe with you, that get you. Those are the primary people you need to be around. And so I walk people through an exercise and I say, okay, write down the people in your life, your family, your friends, write them all down. Okay. So then let's look at the ones. Who are the people who are positive? Who are the people who are negative? Who are the battery chargers? Who are the battery drainers? Okay, so what we want to do is we want to put those people who are the battery chargers in that center circle, and we want to move the other people out into the periphery, into the other circles. And so the thing is that can be hard to do when they're family, right? But my thing is, I talked to somebody one time. She had an aunt that she talked to 3 or 4 times a week who was very um, she caused this woman a lot of stress. And I said, listen, I know you can't totally end the relationship with your aunt, but you don't need to talk to her every week. Start talking to her once a week. I mean, once every couple of weeks or once every 3 weeks. Be intentional about when you speak to this person, right? So it's really about identifying who those people are that get you, that support you, that vibe with you, that will be there for you, that believe in you. And if you have a dream, then they're going to be there for you. Now, here's an interesting thing. I posted something on my social media today. Friends are important, right?
Yeah.
Allies are necessary.
Mm.
If you want to just really soar in life, you need allies. Here's an ally. Martin, I love you. I believe in you. You have all the talent to do this. I know you can do it. But I got to be honest with you. Here's an area where you're kind of screwing up. I'm going to listen to that person. I respect that person because I know they've got my best interest at heart and they want me to do what I want to do. That's an ally. We can have all the friends we want, but we need to be looking for allies. Allies are essential, and you're not going to find a lot of them. There may be a handful in your life. That's the person who has your back all the time, who is going to support you, push you, believe in you. And if you, for some reason, you kind of divert, you go off in another direction, they're going to try to pull you back in, and you respect them enough to listen to them and take action on that, right? And I will tell you, let me give you an example. I've got a friend in the gym, professional bodybuilder. I post videos on my Instagram channel to inspire people. A lot of them are like leg videos because
Yeah.
all these people know that I tore my leg up, and so now I'm using that to inspire me. So 2 days ago, I'm getting ready to leave the gym. He pulls me aside. He said, and I got all the world. He's an ally. He said, Martin, I appreciate what you're doing. You're inspiring people. That's great. But I can look into your eyes and I can tell you're afraid. And I said, what do you mean? You've got fear. He said, I watch your videos, how you're doing these exercises. It's like you've got PTSD. It's like, and which is understandable. If you've had I had a traumatic rupture of the quadriceps tendon. It was a big deal, right? So
Yeah.
he said, but I can see that in your video. I can see there's fear there. And he explained to me he said, it's like PTSD. And he said, I understand you've gone through this, but you got to push through that. And you've got to do this, this, and this, and this. So I heard that, and because I respect him and I know he has my back, I went in and did legs yesterday with a completely different attitude toward my legs, no fear, and it made all the difference in the world. So my thing is, find those allies, people you respect, people that know that what you want to do and support you in what you want to do, but will call you on your BS if you start to go a certain way. They go, no, 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 no. This is what's going on. You need to fix this. Find allies.
Yeah. So allies hold you accountable, but friends enable. They just
Right,
enable.
right, absolutely.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about the past and even some of the present. What is the future looking like for you in terms of, is there another book in you somewhere? Are you going to continue mentoring and speaking? Are you still available as a coach?
I have a number of coaching clients. I'm speaking a lot. I'm working on a third book now. The speech that I'm giving now is called "Training Your Pig to Fly: How the Impossible Becomes Possible When You Believe in Yourself and Go for Your Dreams." So I will have a book coming out.
Mhm.
Yeah, right. The Flying Pigs, right? I have a book coming out by the same name next year on that. But I'm coaching people. I'm speaking. I'm working on this book. Um, and you talked about the future. This is something that's important, and we could get more deeply involved in this at a later time if you're interested. I live my future now.
Mm.
Because here's the thing: our thoughts create our life. Your thoughts create your reality. Where we are now is where we thought we would be, for better or worse. So I have a very clear vision of where I'm going with my life, with my finances, with the woman I love, with the home I live in. All of those things, I'm living them now. So that even though I'm not living them, maybe physically, I'm living them mentally. I'm drawing them to me. And I don't know if you've read people like Joe Dispenza or some of these other people who are personal development people. Um, Really, the key is if thoughts create our reality, and the world we're living in right now was created by the thoughts we were thinking before, then if we have a vision for our life, a very clear vision that we want to live, we need to be living that vision now with elevated energy, elevated emotions. Like when I go to bed, I'm living that dream. I'm in the house, I'm with my wife, I've got my family, I'm out on stage. I'm speaking on stages now and coaching people, but I'm still visualizing bigger arenas, and more people. So the key is, you talk about a future, be your future self now and draw that to you, because what you want is not out in front of you. What you want exists beside you, and we need to draw that to us. And how we do that is we align our energy with God energy or the universe or whatever you want to call it. When we align that energy, we can do anything.
Yeah, so we'll have for people who want to work with you one-on-one or get to know you more or book you to speak, we're going to have your website in the description below. And before we sign off here, which you and I will connect again in the future on the show as well as in person, I have to address a story that was under the 10 things you might not know about me part of your website, which was you mentioned being kidnapped. So tell us about that story to wrap things up here.
Okay, so I did business. I did a lot of business in the former Soviet Union. I was in Russia a number of times. I've since been to Ukraine, but I was living in Houston, Texas, and there was a friend of mine who was from the Republic of Georgia, Tbilisi, Georgia, right? Not Atlanta, Georgia, but the Georgia that's over in the Soviet Union.
Yeah, yeah.
So he said to me, he said, Martin, I have a niece that lives in Tbilisi, and she's really beautiful, and she would like to meet a man. Okay, great. I'm single, right? So I get on a plane in Houston, Texas, and I fly to Georgia to meet this woman.
Wow.
And so I was told beforehand that she spoke English, right? So I get to the airport. I see her and her girlfriend is with her to be there at the airport. So I walk up to her and I say, her name, I'm going to say, her name was, let's call her uh, Irina.
XYZ.
Yeah, yeah. So I meet Irina. It's really nice. And I start to speak to her in English. And her friend says, Irina doesn't speak English. And I'm like, wait a minute. I was told that before I ever got on a plane. I said, no, no, she doesn't speak it. So then I say to Irina, "Вы говорите по-русски?" Because I speak Russian, right?
Mhm.
So she says she doesn't speak Russian. Now, pretty much everybody over there spoke Russian, so I don't know what to do. I mean, she doesn't speak English, she doesn't speak Russian, and because I'd been in business in Russia, so I spoke Russian. So anyway, and there was a guy there, big guy, and the woman, the friend of Irina's who was acting as the interpreter said, "Oh, that's Dmitri. That's her cousin." So anyway, okay, cool. So we get to the apartment, and it was Irina, her sister, her mom. The dad had passed away, and then Irina's friend, the one that came to the airport, and then this big guy, Dmitri. So I went to bed that night. They let me sleep in Irina's room. Irina slept on the couch. And so the next night, everything was good. Next night, three other really big men showed up, and I was like, "What's going on here?" So she explained that these were all relatives, right? So
Right.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So I went to bed that night. About 2 in the morning, I hear what? So anyway, I'm not going to get into the graphic part of this, but I'm going to tell you. So anyway, so Irina comes in. She's in her nightgown, and it's very obvious what she wants to do, right? Now, this is not normal. I've been in that culture before. I don't know this woman. And yet we're about to have this relationship, and I don't even, so I'm already like, this something's wrong here. So she pushes me down on the bed, and then she gets really excited. I'm starting to get really nervous right now. So anyway, I won't go into all the details, but I stood up and I took her up, and I said to her, I said, "You need to leave." I said, leave. And she said to me in perfect English, "No problem, Martin, only shame." I was like, this woman doesn't speak English, but she said that perfectly. "No problem, Martin, only shame." So long story short, she leaves. I close the door. And I was thinking about God the whole time. I was like, what's going on, God? This doesn't make any sense. This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So anyway, so the next morning, I go into the kitchen. It's real quiet. All the big guys are gone. They've all left. It's just me and the women. So I pull the woman, I pulled the woman who spoke English, Arena's friend, into the living room. I said, I don't understand what's going on here. And she said, she just gave it up. She said, Martin, those men, they're not family. But we had a deal with them that they were going to catch you in the act of having relations with this woman, with Arena, and they were going to accuse you of sullying her reputation and doing blah, blah, blah. And they were going to put you in a car and drive you to the priest, and force you to marry this woman. And when you made Arena leave the room, they gave up. They knew it wasn't going to happen. So they had concocted all of this plan to get this girl married. Now, the sad part of that was that in their culture, because she had been married before and divorced, in their culture, when a woman was married, it was almost like she was damaged goods. So she was probably not going to get married again. And so they were desperate to get her married. And when I talked to a Georgian woman who worked at the American Embassy, who was married to a Georgian man, and she said, yeah, that happens all the time. They're always kidnapping men and forcing them to marry women here. I'm like, oh, okay.
Wow.
So that was the story.
Wow. And you know what, Martin? There are plenty of men who do not think as straight as you did in that situation who would have caught themselves in a trap. So
Yeah,
congrats on you for being a self-controlled, disciplined man and
thank you.
listening to that paranoia. Paranoia is good to have. You know, there's a level of it for a reason.
Hey, listen, God was with me the whole time, man, because I was actually speaking to God in my mind. This is not right. This doesn't make any sense. What am I supposed
Yeah.
to do? Like,
Wow. Yeah, that's certainly something. And yeah, when I saw that on your website, I had to ask about that. But ladies and gentlemen, there are 8 other things that we didn't discuss, fun facts about Martin that you can find on his website. So be sure to check that out, along with his coaching, his speaking, and his books. But Martin, it's been a great time having you here. I'm glad we were able to connect. I didn't realize how long it's been. When you said you got injured, during the summer, I was like, has it been that long? And I was
yeah.
like, wow, time is flying by, but time is just a construct, so we're good.
Well, I'm going to leave you with a quote, which is one I came up with myself. It's kind of like my mantra that I use in life. Because if we all allow ourselves to live the programming we had from birth, if we agree to that, we end up living average lives. We end up living mediocre lives, lives that are not worthy of the beautiful, unique, and miraculous people we are. And so what I tell people is, when it comes to mediocrity, never allow the voices of mediocrity to silence the whispers of your own soul.
Amen. Well, Martin, thank you for sharing that and for everything you've shared today. Like I said, looking forward to connecting with you again.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I've loved this.
Sailing through the ocean blue, nuclear reactors my crew, guiding the ship, the stars as our guide, through the waves we ride, jokes and laughter fill the air. On this voyage we have to share, working together, side by side, as one family we will abide. In the heart of the ship we reside, nuclear operators with pride, powering the vessel with every stride. Our mission, a source of great pride.